Hi, guys. I hope you are well. Getting pretty scary out there. I was very optimistic. I went to Puerto Rico, and that was just absolutely brutal. You guys know the story. It turned into basically a police state with martial law, something similar to what you'd find or would have found in East Germany prior to the Berlin Wall coming down, as I can imagine. But then I went to Florida, and things really started to get better. It was great. It was so refreshing to see people who really valued freedom and liberty. And then I was shocked when the CDC came out and said that if you're vaccinated, you really didn't need to wear a mask. And then Walmart immediately came out and said that you didn't need to wear a mask inside their store. And then what really shocked me is when Whole Foods and Trader Joe's came out and basically did the exact same thing. I was very pleasantly surprised. It's awesome, great. This is really good news that even these stores that we may think as woke or liberal or whatever, even they're just saying, you know what, we're done with the whole mask thing. You can wear one if you want, but you don't have to wear one. It's totally up to you. The choice is yours. Putting the responsibility back on the individual, where I think it should be. Now, unfortunately, we are going in the completely opposite direction. And it just seems like it's this emotional roller coaster ride, doesn't it? Where you kind of get down and things are just looking like we are straight on the road to serfdom. And then we have some wins, some positive things happen where you're like, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel. People are waking up here. And then we have another dip down, and we go right back to more government, give the politicians more power, more control. And if you're someone that if you're someone that's, a lot of people accuse me of being anti-mask or anti-vaccine or something. No, that's not it at all. That's not it at all. I am pro freedom of choice. I'm pro liberty. I'm pro the individual. I am anti big government. I think people should be allowed to make their own decisions. If you want to lock yourself in your house and not leave, great. The choice should be yours. If you want to get a vaccination, fantastic. Go for it. I'm not going to think any less of you, but don't make me do it. If you want to wear a mask, if you want to have your 2-year-old child wear 15 masks, go nuts. I feel sorry for your kid, but that's your decision, I guess, as long as they live under your roof. So it's all about the people having the right to choose. That's what this is all about, as opposed to the central planners choosing for you. You see? And you have to, I just got done doing an interview with Meet Kevin, who's running for governor of California, because I know Kevin relatively well. And he's just a brilliant kid and the hardest working kid you'll ever find. That's for sure. But, going into this, I think he was a little more, he wasn't pro big government. He wanted to reduce the size of government. But I think he was looking at through rose colored glasses because he really didn't understand how corrupt it is, the system. But once he got into the belly of the beast, so to speak, and you can hear him tell the story in our interview, it really opened his eyes as to how the politicians, they're not about what's good for the people. They're not about your health. That's the very last thing that a vaccine passport is about. They're not about wearing a mask, or a mask mandate has nothing to do with your health. As far as from the standpoint of the politician, it has everything to do with them gaining more power and control over your life. You say, oh, George, that sounds conspiratorial. But just think about it here. Let's go to what's happening in New York. So now in New York, you have to have a vaccine just to get into a restaurant. And most of us knew that this was going to happen 6 months ago. We were talking about this. I was talking about this a year ago on my channel. So now they came out and said that, okay, you've got to have a mandatory mask. Well, who's going to enforce that law? It's going to be the government at the end of the day. Whether it's to the police force or whatever, it's the government. They're enforcing the law. So as they create more laws pertaining to your everyday life and what you can and can't do and what businesses can and can't do, the mayor or the XYZ politician, the governor, whomever, they get more and more and more power over the citizens, to the extent now in New York, de Blasio can tell a business who they can allow in and who they can't allow in. De Blasio gets to tell you if you have the right to go to a grocery store, to go to a gym or a restaurant. You don't have the right to make that decision. That's no longer yours. It's de Blasio's. Think about how much power that gives him. And you say, well, George, we have to have some sort of political system. Right. But it's not about making government better. It's about making it smaller. I tweeted about this. Look at what happened with Cuomo. Right? Now Cuomo is accused of sexually harassing like 10 or 11 of his female staff members. Right? And this is a guy that was supposed to be running for president or the next presidential candidate for the Democratic Party as of a year ago. He was their rock star. And is it any surprise? Like when all of these scandals come out about politicians on the left or right, I mean, should we be surprised? Of course not. I would be surprised if there weren't scandals coming out about these people. Why? Because we've given government so much power that obviously it's going to attract those people who have an insatiable lust to have control and power over other human beings. It's the exact people that we don't want to be in power is who government is attracting, because we've given it so much power. We've centralized it to that degree. But let's go into the article, because again, I want to, a lot of people will say, well, that don't really think this through, will say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of get what George is saying about the big government, and we don't want that to, we don't want a tyrannical government. But hey, well, why not just have why not just get vaccinated and have a passport? It's for safety. I mean, it's for the public good. So why not do it? I mean, it's all about safety at the end of the day. And why don't we want our fellow citizens to be healthy? Okay. Well, now let's go to the article and let's actually think that through. And once you put even an ounce of thought into it, it becomes overtly apparent that this has nothing to do whatsoever with ensuring health. What you need to know about vaccine mandates if you are visiting New York City. I purposely went to CNN because I knew that if any outlet would spin this to be a good thing, it would be CNN. New York City's newly announced vaccine mandate for certain indoor activities raises questions for visitors about meeting the new requirements. The key to New York Pass. announced Tuesday by Mayor Bill de Blasio. And before we go any further, let's just think about this. You've got New York City, a hub for international travel from people all over the world. And now, just to get into a restaurant, you're going to have to show some sort of app on your phone, and you say, well, that's not that big of a deal, but it is. It is. Trust me, as someone who travels a lot, I've been to over 40 countries. You can't. Sometimes you forget, your phone doesn't work. It's not. It just. And is it not just creepy, for lack of a better term, to every single place you go, you've got to show an app on your phone that proves that you've had some sort of fluid injected into your veins that allows you to enter that establishment? I mean, it doesn't that just kind of in and of itself make your skin crawl? I mean, this is just taking it to a whole new level. But my point is, logistically, this is going to be a nightmare. It just is. And at the end of the day, this is going to be horrible for their economy, for the local businesses there, which obviously de Blasio doesn't care about at all. Zero. It's all about him obtaining more power. So, quote, the only way to patronize these establishments indoors will be if you are vaccinated. The city will be sketching out all the details over the next 2 weeks, the mayor said in his press conference. So how do I show proof of vaccination? Number one, a vaccine card. So again, and then how do you get the vaccine card? Of course, you have to go to a central planning committee, basically, or a kind of an entity that is controlled by the central planners themselves. Presenting the information through the New York COVID Safe app. And let me guess, or let me make a prediction right now. The New York COVID Safe app is going to require a picture of your face. It's going to use facial recognition. I can almost guarantee you it'll use facial recognition. Or through the state's Excelsior Pass, which works for people vaccinated in New York State. How will international visitors prove their, okay, we go on and on. Okay, you get it. And here's where you can start to tell that this has nothing to do with health, right? Do I have to be fully vaccinated? Just one dose, says de Blasio. Okay, well, I think, okay, so number one, if, why just one dose if this is for health? And if the answer is, well, because you've had one dose, well, then why do I need two? If it works with just one dose, then why do I need two? And if you need two for it to work, then why do I just need one to be able to enter an establishment? See, this is where it doesn't pass the sniff test. And I like how they've even now got these bumper sticker slogans. Even the first dose gets you in the game. Again, just bizarre isn't even the right word. It's just eerie. It just makes your skin crawl. Can kids younger than 12 who are not eligible for a vaccine enter these indoor spaces? Of course they can. Of course. Duh. Hello. I mean, that would be ridiculous to require kids who are 12 to have a vaccine or to not allow them in. I mean that would be absurd. As if the rest of this is just commonsensical. And by the way, if this was about health, why is it that a 13-year-old can't come in unless they've been vaccinated, but a 12-year-old, oh, sure, of course they can come in? And to take it a step further, we want families to be together, he says. The smart thing to do, keep the mask on the kids, except when they're eating and drinking, obviously. But think about that. Can you not contract, or can you not spread the cerveza sickness if you're eating? It's like somehow the cerveza sickness says, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I want to spread to everyone in this room, but I'm not going to do it right now because that would be totally unfair because you're eating or you're drinking. So no. I'm just going to sit here in your body, in your sinuses, and just hang out for a while until you get done eating and drinking. Then once you put your mask on, then I'm going to try to get out again and start infecting everyone else in this room. But I mean, listen, I got to play by the rules, of course. I'm not going to do anything, while you're eating and drinking. And how often are you spit coming out of your mouth when you're actually eating? Other than nonstop, especially for kids. You see, and that's why this isn't about health. Because if it was about health, if it was truly, truly about health, and this moved the needle, then the restaurants wouldn't be open. Then it's not that you'd have to wear a mask inside except when you're eating. It's that it was too dangerous to be inside without a mask on. Therefore, if you have to eat, or if you have to take out the mask to eat inside, then you can't eat inside. You see, that's how you can tell this has nothing to do with health. Nothing. Because if masks work, which is debatable, how can you say that it's going to move the needle if you allow people to take their masks off when they're indoors for 90% of the time they're in the restaurant? When you're in a restaurant, you're eating 90% of the time. So how does this move the needle? As if wearing a mask for that 10% of the time you're in a restaurant, when you're just walking from the front door to your seat, somehow that's going to significantly reduce the amount of spread of the cerveza sickness. Give me a break. I mean, it's insulting to our intelligence for them to even make these assertions. And I think that's one of the reasons why I get so fired up about this stuff. Because it's like, who are you trying to kid? Like really? You think I'm that stupid to somehow believe that it helps if you wear a mask 10% of the time when you're in a restaurant, as if you can't spread COVID or the cerveza sickness while you're eating, just like we said before. And it's as if 12-year-olds can't spread it, but oh my gosh, those 13-year-olds, you got to watch out for them. I mean, and then let's take it a step further as far as actually thinking about this critically. Who are you trying to protect? You see, what we have to understand here is that there are 0 people on the planet, or excuse me, not on the planet Earth, but there's 0 Americans right now that don't have access to the vaccine for free. I mean, go down to your local Walmart, for heaven's sakes. They're giving you get free vaccine right walking in the front door. Like, no American that wants a vaccine can't get one. That doesn't. So we've got to start with that premise. So once you understand that, then you have to ask, okay, well, let's say they don't have a vaccine passport and they allow just anyone to come in, and just they leave that up to the individual to make the decision. Well, let's just say that these vaccines work. And let's just assume give them the benefit of the doubt. They work great. They work perfectly. They're 100% safe. Let's just assume that. Okay. Well, okay, who are you protecting? The only people that you'd be protecting, assuming this was true, is people that chose not to get the shot in the first place. So isn't that their decision? Aren't they deciding to take more risk? Aren't they doing that using their own free will? So it's not like you're protecting some group that can't protect themselves. It has nothing to do with it at all, right? And you're not protecting the people that have chosen to get a vaccine, because if there's people in there that have chosen to get a vaccine, if there's other people in there that have not gotten a vaccine, well, that first group that chose to get the vaccine, they're in no more danger. They're in no more danger at all. So the only thing you're doing is trying to protect people that don't want to be protected. Again, that's why it's blatantly obvious that this has nothing to do with health whatsoever. Nada. Zero. It has everything to do with, number one, virtue signaling, and number two, gaining more and more power and control over the people that are in their jurisdiction and micromanaging their daily lives. That's really what this is all about. And even, I mean, the furthest argument might be, okay, George, well, we get this, but although people may choose not to be vaccinated, well, they can still go to the hospital, and this increases the hospital, or it reduces the capacity of the certain beds in the hospital. Okay, fine. But that argument would assume that we don't have any additional capacity. Look at the stats, look at the data, look at the facts, right? And again, let's assume that the vaccination works. You've got 50 to 60% of Americans who have already been vaccinated. So and then out of the 40% that are left, how many of those people have already had COVID and therefore built up immunity? Quite a few, a very significant percentage. So then let's think about this. What percentage of the population actually is at risk of going to the hospital for the cerveza sickness, assuming that the vaccines work well? A very low percentage. Call it maybe 20%, 30%, something like that. So then look at the excess capacity that we have in the hospital system, and this has nothing to do with flattening the curve, if you will. This is an apples to oranges comparison if you're trying to compare this back to when we first started with the cerveza sickness in call it March 2020. Not that there was a valid reason for any of the government restrictions, but back then, at least there was an argument that, hey, we need to try to flatten the curve, if you will, because if this thing gets out of hand, then the hospitals are going to be at maximum capacity, and that could be an issue. At least that was an argument. But now that there's no way that's an argument. The only way that's an argument is if the vaccines themselves don't work. That's just the bottom line. So again, it goes back to people on the left and right and in the middle and of every race, of every creed, of every color, of every American needs to understand that this has nothing, that the objectives, the motivations, the incentives by the politicians have nothing to do with your health and well-being. It has everything to do with virtue signaling in usurping more and more and more power and control over your life. And the reason this is terrifying, and I use that word intentionally, and it wasn't just as clickbait or whatever people want to accuse me of. It's about just accurately explaining what's going on. And quite frankly, I don't think terrifying is a strong enough word, because you've got to understand that even if you can somehow morally and ethically justify what they are doing, you have to admit that this opens up a huge can of worms. What's next? Right? If today, listen, if in 2019 I would have told you that in 2020 they would be locking you in your own house, they would be forcing you to close your business, they wouldn't be allowing you to walk your dog out on a beach where there's no one within 50 miles of you. And in 2021, that they would be forcing you to inject something into your veins that was just whipped up by these drug companies in, call it, 2 or 3 months. And that you would be forced to inject that into your veins to go into a restaurant. And the government would be forcing you to do that. You would have told me that I was completely insane. That would have been right up there with Alex Jones saying that they're turning the frogs gay. Like, people would have made a meme about how ridiculous that is. But sure enough, here we are, a year and a half later, and all of it's played out. So my point is, if 2019 was just, we were at normal phase, let's say, and now just a year and a half later, we can be completely derailed as far as the loss of our personal freedoms and liberty and the amount of control and power the government has taken. Where will we be in another year and a half? Because where we are today is completely unfathomable, or would have been unfathomable a year and a half ago. So my concern is that where we will be in another year and a half is completely unfathomable today. And that is terrifying. What does that world look like? What does the United States look like that is so far removed from even what it is today that you can't even imagine what it looks like? And the reason I'm bringing this up is to point out that this is the path we're on. We were on the path at the beginning of the year. Then we kind of got off the path for a quick month or two there. And it's almost like the global elite and the central planners said, whoa, wait a minute here. No. We're losing too much control here. No, we don't want those rubes and those yokels in the real economy. We are in the real world. We don't want them making decisions on their own. Oh, no. We can't have any of that. Absolutely not. We can't release the slaves at all. We need to take that power back. We need to control more of their life. And right now they're controlling way too much of the lives of themselves and their families. And it's almost like this was rolled out as a way to continue the trajectory of central planning control. And I'm not saying that that's what happened, but boy, oh boy, it sure seems like it, doesn't it? It just seems a little too convenient here. And the main takeaway, and I don't care if you're on I don't care what your political persuasion is. The main takeaway and what you should be concerned with is that it is about what is next. If we will allow the government to force us to inject something into our veins, to allow us just to participate in society, then what's next? Because you know there's going to be something, right? The de Blasios of the world, the Cuomos, the Bidens, the Kamala Harris, the AOCs, the Bernie Sanders, the Gavin Newsoms. I can tell you one thing for sure. They are not going to sit back and say, boy, that 2020 and 2021, that was great. That was great. We now have the exact amount of power that we always dreamed of. So now now that we've got all this power, we're just going to go on vacation and just enjoy it. And we'll never, ever, ever try to have more power because we've got to the point where we've achieved our objectives. No, they're never going to get to that point. What they're going to do is they're going to look back on 2020 and 21 and say, wow, look at how much control we got. I never thought we could get that much control in that short of time. How do we get more? How do we get more power? How do we micromanage people's lives to a greater degree? See, that's why I always say an insatiable lust for power. Because what that implies, and I think it accurately describes most politicians, and that they never have enough power. Never, ever, ever, ever. There is no amount, even after 2020 and 21, that they will be satisfied with. Once you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And once you give them a mile, they'll take 10 miles. And once you give them 10 miles, they'll take 100. And then they'll take 1,000. It never, ever ends. Never. The only time it ends is when you get to a state of complete totalitarianism. And then the system collapses in on itself. We've seen this movie over and over and over again throughout history. And it's just like Churchill, I believe, was the person who said, those who do not read history or don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. And so I would urge you, even if you're someone that believes that we should have these vaccine passports, that it's truly in the best interest of for the health of society, I would urge you, I would plead with you, study history. Study it. Study what happened in Russia. Study what happened in Germany. Study what happened in Venezuela. In all these places where the government got more and more and more and more powerful in the name of the public good. You see, that's another thing that people really need to remember. They think, oh, this could never happen in the United States. I mean, listen to these politicians. They're saying that that's for our good. They're not saying that they want to control your life. Where are you even getting that? That's ridiculous. Bill de Blasio never said he wanted to control your life. As if the central planners in history ever came out and said, you know what, guys, you need to vote for me. Because if you vote for me, I'm gonna build this wall around East Germany, and I'm never gonna let you out. Or I'm gonna build this wall around Berlin, and I'm never gonna let you out. So vote for me. And everyone just says, yeah, lock me up in a cage, woohoo! Build the Berlin Wall. That sounds amazing. That sounds awesome. Yes, I want to be locked in this area. And if I try to leave, I want you to shoot me. That would be fantastic. I want to vote for the guy who's going to do that. You see, my point is that politicians are never, ever, ever going to sell it to you that way. They're going to sell it to you the exact same way they sold the Germans on the Berlin Wall. It's not to keep you in, it's to keep the bad guys out. And why do we want to keep the bad guys out? Well, of course, for your safety, for the public good. And that is why that quote from Benjamin Franklin, if he's the one that said it initially, is so, so important. About people who sacrifice freedom for short-term safety or perceived safety, I would add that to it, deserve neither safety or freedom. Because see, that's what we're doing in the United States right now. Nothing says it better than that. We are sacrificing our freedoms for perceived safety. And where do you draw the line? Because if I would have said in 2019 that people would be not only allowing us, but they would be voting for it, they would be cheering for it, you would have told me that I was crazy, that no American, even no matter how far on the left they were, that they would never, ever, ever be okay with something like we're seeing today right now with these vaccine passports in New York. You would have told me that I was absolutely out of my mind. But sure enough, here we are today. This isn't proposed. This is law. This is actually happening as we speak. In many states, in many cities around the United States, they're going to require you to inject something into your veins in order to go to a restaurant, in order to participate in society. So how much freedom have we given up as a society in the name of perceived safety? And what will we give up in the future? That's the important question, and that's what's terrifying. Because it starts with restaurants and gyms. But then where do we go with it? And then we go to grocery stores. I mean, it gets to a point where it's like District 13 in the Hunger Games, right? Where it's just that district way out in the middle of nowhere, and they're just they're living in caves out there. They're just Neanderthal people that really are completely unrefined, and they're just dirty, and they don't want to be a part of the system at all. I mean, it's getting to a point where I don't even want to say this, but it's true. Within 2 years' time, we could see that the only place that you can have some semblance of freedom is if you got to District 13. If you just live in the middle of the woods somewhere or in some community or out in the middle of the mountains. Now, again, hopefully we won't see this in states like Florida, in Texas, and people will be allowed to vote with their feet. But We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And once you start these vaccine passports, I don't know how they reverse that. Like how in a year do they say, okay, that old injection thing that we were requiring you to do, yeah, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal anymore, right? I mean, they're most likely not going to go down that path. So, I mean, just think about this. What we're doing is we're dividing the entire United States even further than it was already divided by just political groups or who was wearing a mask and who wasn't wearing a mask. I mean, now we're just, honestly, what is the difference between something like apartheid or was it the Jim Crow laws? I believe it was that was actually put on by the government, by the way, that restricted where certain groups could go at certain times, or if they could get into a restaurant based on the color of their skin, right? How is that any different than what we're doing right now? And you say, oh, well, George, no one was, by having, the blacks in the South Africa or something like that, or during Jim Crow, having them go into a restaurant. Well, that wasn't, a health risk. Okay. Well, listen, by someone going into a restaurant that doesn't have a vaccine, that isn't a health risk to anyone that has the vaccine, if the vaccine works, right? So you're protecting people that explicitly have come out and shown you that they don't want your protection, or else they would have gotten the vaccine already. So again, this is not about health. This is about segregating certain groups in our society. That's at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here. We're saying, you people with this belief system, we want you to leave, get out of here. We don't want you to be a part of the community. We don't want you to be a part of the society. You go set up your own place, your own society, and then we'll sit here and we'll do things our way. And when you see this divisiveness throughout history, what does it always lead to? It always leads to social volatility. And it goes back to that Real Vision interview with Neil Howe the other day, the author of The Fourth Turning, where he said in his research, he has never in the history of the United States seen it as divided as it is today, with the exception of the Civil War. So I'm not sitting here predicting that we're going to have a civil war in the United States. But what I am saying is we are a hell of a lot closer to that becoming a reality than we were a week ago, a month ago, or prior to this completely insane law that, again, has absolutely nothing to do with health. And if you think it has something to do with health, you're just not thinking critically. You're just not. You're delegating your thinking to the politicians. And when you look at it, let's look at what's happened with Cuomo. So think about that. Those are the people that you're delegating your thinking to. The people that are the bottom of the barrel, that have very low character, that have zero integrity, no morals, no ethical standards whatsoever. Those are the people that you're delegating your thinking to. And just going along with whatever they say. Oh, well, they told me to wear 18 masks. Okay, no problem. They told me to get a vaccine that, they tested for a couple months. Yeah, no problem. I mean, they know best, right? They know best. Oh, what? That guy that knows best was sexually harassing all the females on his staff? Oh, well, I don't know what, maybe he doesn't know best. Maybe he does. Well, he definitely knows best he definitely knows what's best for my health, but maybe he doesn't really know how to conduct himself in public. But he definitely knows what's best for my health. Like how do people who have any intellectual integrity whatsoever maintain those two thoughts simultaneously? That yes, these people, these psychopaths, these sociopaths that are in political power, they are wildly flawed to the point where they can't even control themselves. But at the same time, they know what's best for my health. So I just need to listen and obey every single word that comes out of their mouth. The message here, people, is number one, we are back on the road to serfdom, unfortunately. And if we continue down this path, it will lead to totalitarianism. That's what history tells us, not George Gammon. That's what history tells us. That's first and foremost. Secondly, at no point in American history, in my opinion, has critical thinking been more important. And third, and lastly, I don't think at any point has educating yourself and understanding the world around you, not only the economic components, but the political components and the society, the psychological components. At no time has it been more important to understand those dynamics than right now. Because at the end of the day, guys, like we've said many times, this channel and the George Gammon channel is all about helping you build wealth and thrive in a world of out of control central banks and big governments. But break that down. Why is the tagline that I chose when I started this channel, or the George Gammon channel, over a year and a half ago? Why did I choose build wealth and thrive? Why not just build wealth? Because in order to thrive, it's not just about building wealth. It's not just about making the size of your portfolio go up. Because the only thing that wealth is good for is to increase your freedom. And if your wealth is increasing, but your freedom is decreasing, then what's the point of making wealth or building wealth in the first place? You see, so that's the key component: build wealth and thrive. And in order to thrive, in order to benefit from gained wealth, or increasing the size of your net worth, your portfolio, or increasing your income, whatever it is, to gain a benefit from that, you have to have personal freedom and liberty. So the priority is freedom, first and foremost. And that's my main message. And hopefully that's what you all take away from not only watching this video, but watching the Rebel Capitalist channel, the George Gammon channel, the whiteboard videos, and the Rebel Capitalist show. All right, let's do some shout outs, guys. We've got Wow, a lot of people, 769 people on the live stream. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. This is definitely a very, very important topic right now. And, you know, we're living in dangerous times, my friends. We really are. We really are. We got Matthew hanging out. Matthew James. We've got El Chomio, Todd Smitherman, Moody in the house, J Crypto, Sustainable Lumber Company, J.R. Moxley, Revert to Means, CC Jelly, Alex Z, Evan Geo, One Punch, Alice Scholl, FNS, Cheesy Dish, Wayne Smith, Drake Smith Performance, Stephen Turalongo, Jane in the house, Dr. Detroit, Rich Uncle Joey, Silver Money Dude. Now what? Jason Smith. Okay, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you on the next video. Make sure you tune in tonight to my interview on the George Gammon channel with my good buddy, Meet Kevin, who describes the inner workings of the political system in California and how corrupt it really is. And I can guarantee if it's that corrupt in California, it's the exact same in New York, where de Blasio is pulling out these ridiculous vaccine passports and putting the whole entire state and city on the road to serfdom and totalitarianism.